horror movie night. As usual, we let you guys vote. This was a nail biter. Scott, I'm trying to remember what your pick was on this.
13th Warrior.
Okay, so 13th Warrior did not fare well, but
it's because people don't understand. Antonio Banderas.
But
I thought it was the one about the kangaroos, and then I remember it was that's Warriors of Virtue.
But Kyle, you picked Jumanji, and it was literally a 1 vote difference to bring us into Streets of Fire.
Dude, I voted for Streets of Fire, so I think I fucked it up. I know.
It's like,
but actually, I was excited to see this. I have never seen this before.
Yeah, this is my first and last pick.
So here was my bizarre viewing of Streets of Fire. I took a class in college that I could not explain to you what the fuck this class was. It was literally just called pop culture.
Oh, well, this...
And the teacher would just show up, usually 10 to 15 minutes late for a 45-minute class, which was wild. And she would just have us watch a movie. And for some reason, we watched Streets of Fire 3 times that semester.
I think you have a lot to talk about with this movie.
And like, it was so insane. And I watched it the first time, like, what the fuck is this? But then by the third time that I was watching it in class, I was like, all right, this soundtrack's pretty fire. So I bought the soundtrack, and then the songs got stuck in my head, and then I bought the Blu-ray from Shout
Could
Factory.
you contact your other classmates and open up a case against this professor? Can there be a class action lawsuit?
So my notes break into 2 different pieces, right? Piece number 1 is just my thoughts and my praise and complaints while watching it.
Of course.
And then the second page is all of the information that I pulled about this movie.
There's so much information about this movie. For a movie that no one knows about. For good reason. It's not a good movie. I just want to be completely clear here, everybody. It's not a good movie.
So I think I somewhat disagree. I don't think it's a good movie. I think that this is a perfect example of the wrong casting bringing down an entire movie.
Which one?
I think... Well, if you break down the making of this movie, it seems like picking a very inexperienced young actor to be the lead of your movie.
Michael Pare
was apparently super difficult to work with.
He looked like he was about to fall asleep every scene.
Yeah, him and Rick Moranis apparently got into multiple fights because he didn't like that Rick Moranis would make fun of him. Walter Hill and him disagreed on a bunch of stuff and would fight about it constantly. And even the writer of the film went as far as to say that there was a little bit of an issue, that he felt like, okay, maybe if we didn't cast him, this would have gone better for us.
Damn,
because I kind of liked his character. I kind of like.
Really, I think he's a piece of shit.
Oh well, I like the way he delivered this piece of shit. Like I liked, I just thought it was so intriguing to look at. But he also looked like a dude I went to school with. That I just couldn't. This dude Phil, who's kind of a piece of shit too.
Yeah,
everybody knows Phil.
All right, I'm gonna rock through these facts real fast, as fast as I can, because it's a lot, and then we'll dive into the movie. But the movie went on to make $8 million on a production of $14.5 million, so this is a bona fide bomb. According to Walter Hill, the origins came from a desire of what he wanted to make as a perfect film for when he was a teenager, and all the things that he thought were great then, which he still had great affection for. Custom cars, kissing in the rain, lots of nylon, trains, high-speed pursuits, rumbles, rock stars, motorcycles, joking when in tough situations,
tuna fish sandwiches,
leather jackets, and questions of your own honor. According to the writer Gross, Hill said that he wanted the film to be about the hero in a comic book, but since he didn't like any of the comic books he read, he just wanted to create his own original character. He wanted to create his own comic book movie without a source material. During the filming of 48 Hours, Gross said that Walter Hill was getting annoyed at this vision that he didn't care for women. He said, people think that I don't like women, and I know that that's not true. That's why I want to demonstrate it even more in my next film, and that's why he's going to do something new and put a bunch of female characters at the center of the narrative as opposed to just damsels in distress.
Guys, I don't think that he succeeded in that.
Think that will work.
This movie is so misogynistic. It's like, hey, you stupid broad. You know, that's every dude.
Skirt.
So here's another thing.
And even the women hate women. It's fucking wild.
So here's another thing I thought was interesting. So Amy Madigan originally came in to read for Reva, Cody's sister, but told Hill and Silver that she really wanted to play the role of McCoy, which was written to be played by an overweight male who is a good soldier just in need of a job. She said, I think that I could play tough and strong, and I think that you could have a woman do it without even rewriting the part. Hill agreed and just cast her in the role and changed a few lines.
That's a Sigourney Weaver right there.
Yeah. It's a total Sigourney Weaver thing. And then Walter Hill's thoughts on the movie were that the audience will go with you if you set up a completely abstract world with teenage values and play out the drama within it. It was kind of real, but it also wasn't at all. I always said that whenever someone says fantasy, they immediately think of something like Disney. The idea of a hard-hitting drama inside of a fantastical world, well, that was kind of different at the time. I always thought of it as sort of a musical. They kind of saw that it worked in the world of an MTV music video, but I was also inspired by the teen flicks of John Hughes. They were in the universe of a teen movie and a teen reality. So here's where it's going to be weird about our movie. No one was ever going to be over 30. The whole world is a high school, especially Tom Cody being a football hero and Willem Dafoe being a total greaser. Remember, you had John Hughes films at the time, but you also had Francis Ford Coppola making The Outsiders and Rumblefish. So Walter said that they were going to make a high school movie that's also going to be a comic book, but also be a musical. He also didn't want the film to be specifically violent because there's no blood and no one would die, because in his eyes this was a high school fairy tale. And then the last thing I had written down was that the screenwriter Larry Gross said that he does think that the film has been influential. He said, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, Streets of Fire did have a little bit of an impact on other filmmakers. There's 2 films that came out in the years after that I think are at least inspired by some of the iconography that we put into Streets of Fire, and those would be RoboCop and Seven. Seven takes place in a completely different world. It's not New York. It's not Chicago. It's a world where it just rains all the time. It's always dark. It's always night.
The Crow.
There are 2 very successful movies that figured out how to do the stylized version with the approximate amount of gore that hooked in an audience. I think we would have done so much better if we had more gore.
I don't think this movie would have been better with gore. I think this movie would have been better with so many other things. Gore it doesn't even track on the top 10.
Gore is not on the list.
And then someone had pointed out the 1989 beat-em-up game Final Fight actually is very similar to the plot line of Streets of Fire.
I love it. That's fantastic.
And in 2008, Albert Payne, who did Cyborg, also made an unofficial sequel called Road to Hell.
Oh, shit. R.I.P. He just passed away.
Yeah. Sad. But yes, here we are, Streets of Fire, a rock and roll fable from another place and another time.
Laying out all that stuff, I mean, it sounds like mission accomplished.
He said that he thought of this being like a teen.
You know what I mean? Like
he said in one of the other things that I pulled, like, this is basically a teen version of the Warriors. Like, if the Warriors were all high school students, this is what he was making.
Yeah. I felt that very through and through. There was even I think pulled direct shots, direct setups from the Warriors, especially on the subway stuff, all the framing of that and the subway
Warriors
car going down.
When was Warriors?
78 or 79.
Yeah. So I'm torn on this movie. I obviously am the one who likes it the most on this, but I know that it's not good. I'm watching, I'm like, this isn't the right movie. This was fairly well received by the critics. I think it had a high 60%, low 70%.
There's a big following for it
too. But all of them called out Michael Pera and I'm going to massacre his name every time I say it, I can tell. Michael Pera and Diane Lane as the 2 biggest faults in the movie. I think that one of the biggest mistakes, and this actress actually voiced that she felt this way too, is that you've got E.G. Daily in this movie that is a musical, and she doesn't sing a single song, but then you've got Diane Lang lip singing 2 songs, and I'm like...
The weirder thing, though, is that they got legit music. I'm pretty sure they got legit musicians to back her, to be her backing band.
Yeah, it was this band called Fire Inc. Yeah.
Okay, so the drummer is obviously playing, but he's literally playing some other song.
Yeah.
Because she's lip syncing correctly, and he's just over there fills and fucking snare hits, and it's amazing because it's not even I was trying to think that they were they did a shitty job of syncing in the editing, but no, it's literally that just different.
The songwriters in this movie, not even the bands that performed, the people that came in and wrote songs for this movie,
we gotta talk about that.
Unreal, the amount of people that they got to do this. So I like the songs in this movie. That's probably the biggest plus for me.
Probably could have used 1 or 2 more songs.
I agree with you.
It wasn't really a rock and roll musical. It was there were a couple of songs. That's it.
It was bookended by music mostly, with 1 or 2 songs at the end. And then I will say, credit where credit's due. This is one of those movies there is no first or second act. This movie just starts in Act 3 and lives there. I give it credit for that because I do think that this movie, warts and all, because there is a lot of problems with this movie, but I feel like the movie moves. Like, it's like set piece to set piece to set piece to set piece, like never really slowing down. The problem is that the main lead seems like he does not want to be there, but like Rick Moranis, even playing this douchey character that's so different from Rick Moranis.
I loved hearing him say shit. He said shit like 3 times, and it was the best part of this movie.
I was going to say, he has that star quality where you just like, if he's on screen, you're paying attention to him.
Oh, yeah.
Like every time that Rick Moranis showed up, I'm like, all right, what's Billy Fish up to?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I felt the same way when Willem Dafoe, as little as he was kind of in the movie, but as soon as he showed up on screen, man, like...
Did you catch who his second in command was?
No, I don't know who it was.
It's Lee Ving from the band Fear.
What?
Who also was Mr. Body in Clue, but like
that's fucking weird.
I was like, what is happening here?
Nuts.
There's also
that's bizarre.
There's a bizarre like
he doesn't play any music. What the fuck does he do? What?
Yeah, that's what I mean. They brought in an actual musician for
have Fear play that song. Remember when they're in the Bombers bar and that band is playing rockabilly and the dude is literally drowning in his own sweat. He couldn't even open his eyes. He's sweating so much.
Do you know who that band is?
I thought it was fucking Tom Waits at first. I was like, that's not Tom Waits.
it's the Blasters who do most of the songs in From Dusk Till Dawn.
What?
They did that song Dark Night.
Shit.
But the song that they're singing...
So weird.
They're singing a song called One Bad Stud, which was written... This song that they're performing was written for the movie by Jerry Lieber and Mike Stroller, who wrote Hound Dog and Kentucky Rain for Elvis.
It tracks though. Like
it does track.
That's what I mean. I think he found the right people for those songs.
Yeah.
Like,
I won't argue that, but also if you were to remake this movie, like if you were to take the structure of this film and remake it now, it would be, as we said before the recording started, we would have Mandy Moore as Diane Lane. Well, more or less. I mean, she's a little on the older side, but for Diane Lane, because she probably couldn't have been more than like 27 in this. And Mandy Moore, I think she's in her late 30s, or maybe she's 40 by now. I mean, because she's probably my age or older.
She's 40 actually.
She looks fantastic. I only know this because Megan got me to care about This Is Us, and I cried every single time I sat down and watched an episode. So my mistake there.
I was shocked when you said that because I'm like, you're a man who does not like a drama
Fucking
that
hate
will make him
but
cry.
Then well, also we went and saw Hamilton last night. It was phenomenal, and I cried by song 2.
Oh, dude, I was waterworks when I saw it, dude.
This is the second time that I've seen it, and the third time Megan has seen it, and this production is way better. It was way better for me because they added a lot of little flourishes that just made it way more. It was very, very cool. I loved it.
Can I say that that's my favorite thing about musicals is that even a perfectly structured musical that is like beloved in the hands of every different production can have these little twists and turns where it's like you could see 100 different companies do the exact same musical and feel like you've seen 100 different adaptations, and that is so fucking cool.
That's like a beautifully, like, I don't want to say it's not underappreciated, but it's like not talked about enough as like part of what makes theater so magical. Like that's not an aspect that I think gets talked about.
Even the idea of just seeing the same cast a bunch of different days, it's always going to be a little bit different because it is a live experience.
I think that the troupe that's doing it, I think a lot of the backup dancers, when you say backup dancers and Hamilton, they're not just backup dancers. They are probably pulling more weight than the actual leads because
I think 99% of the time anyway with Hamilton specifically, like the backup dancers are also
understudies
because when the Disney Plus version came out of the original cast, me and my friends were like, that dancer in the background is who played Jefferson when we saw it on Broadway. Like that
and
person
let me just say,
the
Jefferson that we have for this run in Cleveland is so good.
Yeah.
So good. He was like very sassy, and
that's the way you gotta do it.
He was less of a James Brown. I mean, like the first time we saw it, I mean, the character is really written to be a James Brown, but this guy was way more of like almost Faye.
Yeah.
Like it was also awesome. There were so many femme moments that were just
That's
hilarious. That was the comedy aspect that this one brought.
It's also
it was so much
big
better.
shoes to step into anything in Hamilton, honestly, because it's like I am hard pressed to think of a musical that has that's original cast is filled with so many
my God.
iconic, heavy hitting
because
performances.
it's going to sound like you're just trying to imitate.
Yeah,
if
you have to
don't-
do your own thing, or you're gonna
You do.
people
our
are gonna write
King
you off.
Was as good, if not better, than the original King. And I know that might sound like blasphemy, but he brought more humor to it. It was actually way funnier than the last time I saw it. And I feel like I've listened to the soundtrack a lot, the original soundtrack with Lin-Manuel in it and everything. And I felt like everybody brought. I can't say that the ladies were as good as the original cast,
but you can't.
How
touch
can you be?
Renee alone is like one of the best singers that we've. My biggest strike against Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist was that they had her in it, and she only sang one song in the entire series.
Yeah.
I'm like, you've got like one of the best singers in Broadway history, and she gets to do a duet with Lauren Graham. Like that is unfair.
All right, I'm so sorry. I got
this
off
is.
Track. Hamilton is my favorite musical. Like, I love Little Shop. It still is my number 2. But Hamilton is, in my opinion, a completely different beast because it's like a puzzle. It's a perfectly constructed puzzle.
No, I totally get that. Little Shop's my number 2 to Streets of Rage, Streets of Fire.
Streets of Fire. And but
no.
Okay,
I'm
so
kidding.
if we were to do this movie, so this movie came out in 1984. They're basically saying like 25 years in the past. So 57, 58, whatever.
Yeah, so we'd be doing like an 80s, 90s film.
It'd be a late 90s or
Early
it would
2000s,
actually be
yeah.
like it'd be 99, 2000. So everybody would be Mandy Moore in the lead as whatever her name is.
Ellen,
Ellen Lee or Ellen whatever. And then we would have everybody driving Sunfires because those that was the car that everybody had in 1999.
Dude, and they'd instead of going to like that bar, they'd go to like the mall.
They go to the
Like
mall.
it would be the
But the greasers would just be a bunch of white kids with backwards hats and Junko jeans.
yes, dude.
Dude.
That's yes.
Or would they be preps? No, they'd be greasers. Greasers were not preps, so they would be they'd be listening to new metal with their jinkos on, and they'd be like, "You're gonna be my girlfriend for a week and a half."
Dude, and just like huffing, just like
Kyle, let's make
huffing, like
Dude, be doing
cement
whippets.
glue.
They'd be doing
Yeah,
whippets.
just fucking doing whippets. Yeah.
Can I real quick? Can we pause?
I love this.
Let me tell you about the stupid short film / sketch idea that I had today, which was West Hot American Summer, which was reimagining Wet Hot American Summer if Wes Anderson had directed it. Where it's
Throw
like,
that into one of those AI generators.
where it's like all like folky versions of the songs from the movie, and everyone delivers the dialogue in a very monotone, plain way.
It would
Aubrey
look really
Plaza as
Moonrise. It
everybody.
would look really Moonrise Kingdom.
Yeah.
But like, yeah.
So I wanted to bring up some of these other singers and songwriters that came on here, and I didn't write down who wrote every single song, but like Stevie Nicks wrote a song for this movie, Tom Petty wrote a song for this movie, but the best examples of them finding the absolute right person to write specific songs was so Kenny Vance is a name that I don't know if many people know. I am a huge fan of Kenny Vance. He's like a 1950s doo-wop star who later went on to produce all of Steely Dan's records. But
no
he
kidding.
wrote the doo-wop song "Countdown to Love" that the doo-wop group sings in the bus.
Great song. Great
Perfect
song.
thing there. And then Jim Steinman only knows how to write one type of song, and they bookend this movie. And if you like what Jim Steinman does, great news.
Wait,
You're
you're
gonna
not
love.
talking about "I Can Dream About You," right? Because that's Hartman.
No, I'm talking about the opening and closing songs, "Nowhere Fast" and "Tonight Is
you
What It
mean
Means
this-
to Be Love."
I thought that you were talking about the songs that sounded exactly like they could have been on Vicious Lips. Or I'm sorry, those are the songs that could easily have been from Vicious Lips.
Dude,
this movie
whatever
is Vicious Lips. I'm
This
sorry
movie
if you guys like. Fuck. Can I just already say that that's gonna be my
That's
my
fine.
double feature?
You can take
Fuck.
it.
Fuck.
But so "Nowhere Fast." So for people who might not know the name Jim Steinman for any reason, he wrote all of "Bat Out of Hell," all of "Bat Out of Hell
Yeah.
2, and then also wrote a song called Total Eclipse of the Heart. He wrote a song called Holding Out for a Hero. Like these little obscure 80s songs. These songs sound exactly like all of those songs.
He
Much
phoned
so,
these in.
Yeah. Well, Nowhere Fast, Meatloaf covered on his album the same year this movie came out. The opening song, there's a Meatloaf version.
There's some
of.
real synergy going on here.
Well, so can we talk about I Can Dream About You?
Sure.
That was the
fucking
lead
love that
single.
song.
I mean, it's a great song. It's a lead sing. It's one of those songs.
It's a perfect pop 50s throwback sound. It's so good.
But the funny thing is that that's okay. So when I was always looking for songs to do death metal covers of, when I found like Call Me, that was that exact like kismet of, oh, this song is so good, but it's also been forgotten. And so you do it, and people are like, what the fuck is this? Oh my god, I haven't thought about this song in 20 years. I Can Dream About You is the exact same way. And that song was the lead single from this. There's an entire massive Wikipedia page about it, as it is referring to this movie and the soundtrack and blah, blah, blah. Here's the fun little part, because it comes down to the fact that this was not supposed to be in this movie. It was supposed to be for Hall & Oates. Hartman went to Daryl Hall, and he was like, I wrote you this song. It's perfect for you guys. Daryl Hall's like, I'm so sorry, we can't do it. We just finished recording our new record. It was going to come out in like 6 months, 5 months, whatever it was. I don't remember what the exact date was, but so they were like, I'm so sorry, we can't do it. And so then Hartman put it as this in this movie. He gave it to this movie. It became the lead single from the movie. It was a massive hit. It was like, it topped all the charts in 1984. And Hall & Oates were like, fuck. And so 20 years later, in 2004, they did a like a B-sides record, or maybe it was a covers record where it was just songs that other people did. When they performed it live, they did this song, or maybe it was just a covers set, something like that. What? And they covered this song, and Daryl Hall was like, he came to us 20 years ago and was like, can you do this? I wrote this song for you guys, and we couldn't do it. And it's just so it's upset us forever that we couldn't do it because it's such a big song. But I hope that he hears this and likes it. And I love Hall & Oates. Like Megan and I have talked about it, that Hall & Oates is like one of our favorite bands to listen to, like that and Fleetwood Mac. Like when we're like, what should we listen to? It's literally between those two bands, or Queen. Mm-hmm. Those are like the three bands that we listen to all the time because they never disappoint.
Yeah. Yeah, they never miss. They absolutely never miss, except for when they didn't do the song, apparently.
But they felt bad about it.
Did they record that? Did they record that performance?
I don't know if there's a full recording, like a studio recording, or a live recording, but I know there's one or the other.
Dude, I got to listen to
So there's
that
also
too.
an interview with Kenny Vance, who was the musical director for the film, and he talks about this too. And he said the same guy that sings lead on the song we're talking about and Countdown to Love. A song that I wrote for the film was a guy working at Radio Shack at the time named Winston Ford. And I think if you look at the film and they're singing it live in that movie, that's the version that was supposed to come out. And I did a studio recording of that. But when Dan Hartman heard it, I don't know what happened next. I just know that he took off that guy's voice and put on his own. And then he had a huge hit with it. ... Hollywood could be a very slippery place sometimes.
No fucking kidding. No kidding.
But the only other big thing that I wanted to bring up with this movie is that you mentioned that the Jim Steinman songs feel a little phoned in, and I mostly agree, although I get that fucking the revels begin and the fires were started. We're dancing for the restless and the broken hearted.
No,
that gets looped in my head.
That's the problem.
Yeah, it gets looped in my head forever. But they were brought in to replace the song Streets of Fire by Bruce Springsteen, which was supposed to be the actual opening and closing song. And there's been two different reports. Bruce Springsteen's camp says that the studio just decided they didn't want to pay for the song. The studio says that Bruce Springsteen didn't want anybody singing his song. I'm more inclined to believe the Bruce Springsteen side of that story, because I think Homeboy's getting paid. He doesn't give a shit if it's his version or someone covering it.
Right, right.
But the end of the movie, there's this scene where Dafoe shows up in town. All of the bikers roll in. A nice little touch that I do love of this like timeless world that we're in is this weird cover of Rumble by Link Ray that's just playing in the background.
Yep.
And then there's a sledgehammer fight. out of fucking nowhere. And I'm okay with that. Like, I know that this is a bad movie. And I know this isn't even necessarily a fun movie, but it's another one of those films when I watch it, I think to myself, there's enough good things in here that you could like assemble a really enjoyable movie out of this. And I can't even say in more capable hands, because we're talking about Walter Hill here. We're not talking about like some hack that rolled in and did
I think
it.
that's why it's like like he accomplished what he set out to do.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's like, so I can't with Flair. I just don't think that like conceptually or like story wise, more story wise than anything. I just like it kind of falls flat, and I just wanted like one or two more songs. Like make it this rock and roll fucking fable thing that you're like pitching to me. Like right in the beginning of the movie, Pitch Black, the first like credits that roll are that they're gonna pitch this thing, and the fucking music is going, and I'm like, hell yeah. And then it just tones the fuck down. Though I do want to cosplay as Willem Dafoe in those overalls.
Oh, those the mucklucks or whatever.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
Apparently, when they were in the editor's room looking at the footage, the writer, I keep blanking on his first name, I think it's Larry Gross. Larry Gross recalled that it took about 5 weeks into the 14-week shoot, they started editing. And he said he looked at Walter Hill and said, "This movie's a little bit weirder than I thought it was going to be." He said, "We didn't just anticipate that the combination of all these elements, we didn't anticipate what the combination of all these different elements was going to turn out to be. And we had a very conscious design concept of the movie, but I think we didn't fully grasp how strong of a concept it would be in terms of the combining of all of these elements. In a way, I think Streets of Fire was about expanding the Warriors concept onto a bigger stage, but when expanding it to a bigger scale, it completely changed, and the movie's bigness compositionally changed the meaning of everything and made it look less like what we intended." So
110%.
Yeah, like I can see where it's
accurate.
like, I mean, I think the very first thing that I read is so telling, where it's like he just wanted to make something that captured everything he wanted in a film as a teenager, and it's like he got all of those things.
Yes.
But
it's
but
like when a child makes a
have?
sandwich with every piece of food that he likes,
exactly.
and it tastes like fucking garbage.
Yeah, like it's like there is
Put
such
every
a thing
topping
as,
on the pizza.
Yeah, exactly.
It's that Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen video. Of them
Give me
making the
pizza. Oh, dude, don't remind me.
Easy,
Hey, do you have an idea for a podcast but don't know where to start? Or do you have an already existing podcast that you want to take to the next level? Well, check out WeKnowPodcasting.com. From concept development to theme music to editing to logos, WeKnowPodcasting.com is a one-stop shop for all things pod. Don't hesitate to hit us up. We're very nice.
All right, well, double features, Scott. We already got yours. You
Yeah,
threw
it's Vicious Lips
in
or
there.
Little Shop. I mean,
Yeah.
but I think Vicious Lips is actually better, so go ahead with yours, Matt.
I'm going to write down the best musical we've ever fucking discussed on this podcast. Sorry, Little Shop, but Phantom of the Paradise, man.
God.
Every time I watch
I
this.
thought for a second there that you were going to say Shock Treatment.
Yeah, no, I
Oh.
do love Shock Treatment, but no, I mean,
Yep.
this gives me Phantom of the Paradise vibes and what they're trying to achieve. I think Phantom of the Paradise, I don't even think, I think it's a fact.
It works.
Phantom of the Paradise is also doing something over the top and trying to combine so many different elements into a singular concept, but just handled a little bit with a little bit of a sense of like editing, like the big picture. They knew what they were trying to say, and I get that this movie's not trying to say anything. I don't think that there was anything.
No,
that
it's
they were
all about
trying to
vibes.
say. Yeah,
It's
so
just vibes.
and vibe is hard to hold for 90 straight minutes. All right, Kyle.
Dude, I feel like this movie could pair with so much. I could not. And the ones that you've said and the ones that we've even referenced beforehand make a lot of sense. But two things come to mind. One, I'm pretty sure that bar set is the same set that they use in Never Too Young to Die, when Gene Simmons has his it performs at a nightclub. I'm positive that's what it was. So I had Never Too Young to Die, but I actually think I'm going to go with Liquid Sky. It just also is this sort of dark, dreamy, this one, and it's more science fiction, and it just, that one also relies on vibes, but it has even less to say. It's more pointed, and I just think it pairs really well.
vibe
Yeah.
that it goes for,
Yeah,
Like, nothing
and
matters.
and it's a little sleazy too. It's a little
Really
sleazier too.
sleazy.
There's like this feels safe. The Streets of Fire feels like safer, and Liquid Sky seems sleazy. I don't know. That's just like a mushy, like Dorito induced like
Hug
situation. Yeah. My buddy Evan would say, a velour tracksuit on the inside of my skin. Like that's what it feels like.
What have you watched, listened to, done, experienced?
So I house sat for a weekend, so I watched a lot of shit, but I'm only going to mention 2 things that I watched. But I kept a track, 15 things watched in a weekend while just sitting on this person's couch with their
rot
dogs.
my brain. My eyes would just melt.
But the 2 that jumped out at me, one is a interesting documentary that's on HBO Max called it's been around for about a year and some change. Class Action Park, about Action
That
Park.
sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
Have you both watched it?
No, I just know
Yeah.
about it.
Okay, Kyle, you have watched it or not?
I've seen it. Yes.
It is fascinating to me about halfway through that movie when I realized that this entire documentary is based on approximately 6 interviews that they did and then just archival footage. Like, they did not interview a lot of people for this at all. But it is a wild story. It's actually handles it really well in the sense that the first hour of this hour-and-a-half documentary is just... it's almost laugh out loud. You're like, what the fuck is happening? This park is crazy. And then, like, just as you're feeling goofy and fun about it, the last 30 minutes is like a total tone shift where they're like, and now we're going to talk about all the people who died because of the negligence of this place. And it's like, I like that they present it that way. Like, I like that they, like, because it does a good job of, like, absolutely depicting why this would have been appealing to a bunch of 12-year-old kids. You're like, what? This is crazy. This is like kids running a park. Like, and it does a really great job of balancing that. And the people that they brought in were just very funny. Like, they got the right people to talk about their experiences there for the first half. And then the other thing I watched, we mentioned the movie The Happening on a Patreon episode that we recorded. But I watched his newest movie, Old, which is available on HBO Max.
Mm-hmm.
I am so confused on if I like this movie or not, because it's another one where I'm like, is he we did a video on Geekscape, and that's what put this movie on my radar, that was like, is M. Night Shyamalan intentionally trying to invoke Ed Wood like isms in his movies now? And it was like, he brings in actors who have won Oscars for performances and seemingly forces them to act very stiff in their delivery. Like, is he just fucking with us, or is he truly that bad of a director? But, like, he's made movies that were good, so we know that he can't, like, he's an anomaly. He's such an interesting person. Old is weird. It made me feel uncomfortable at certain points. It's bizarre. Like, are you familiar with anything about this movie?
Yeah, I know all about it.
Yeah, it's just a strange... How about you, Kyle? Have you watched this?
I haven't watched it, but I feel like I've seen a little bit or enough about it to understand that it's probably weird.
But then there's things where it's like, he'll use like a tracking shot in the movie, and it's used perfectly. Like, it's like, oh wow, this is really building suspense and tension, because like there's no cuts. We're just dealing with like all of the things that are happening, and the camera's beautifully moving back and forth between like the 3 different things that are happening at once. And then we get another scene where you're like, who wrote this dialogue? What is happening? Why? Like, he's such I don't enjoy my time watching M. Night Shyamalan movies, but then I can't stop thinking about them after I've watched them. So I'm like, oh, God damn it. Like, I guess it's one of those things where I got curious. It was late. I was watching a dog.
Man, you don't have to defend yourself to us.
Look,
Yeah.
I'm gonna say that I watched Old and then immediately went to Action Park as almost like a palate cleanser, because I was like, I need something that I know will just be weird and goofy for a little bit. But yep, those are my 2 things I'm going to talk about.
Well, I already talked about going to see Hamilton, so I mean, I got nothing else interesting to top that.
There you go, Kyle.
I watched Halloween 5 for the first time in my life. And
so what are we talking about on the podcast?
It's got to be this year.
October 2023.
I'm flabbergasted. I wrote my Letterboxd review, 3 stars.
Wow.
This was incomprehensible blasphemy, and I loved it. Because I think I talked about watching 4 for the first time on here a few weeks back. As what did I watch? And what I loved about 4 and sort of like bringing Myers back into some sort of like understandable setting, 5 just comes in like a fucking like an old granny driving through the window of her salon. Like it just comes barreling through, not confused, like completely. Like, did they already get their hair done, or are they going to their appointment? Like, I don't know. Is this even their salon? It's it's bonkers.
That's a beautiful analogy, man.
I could not stop watching. I couldn't take my eyes off of it. I loved every second of it. It was amazing. There's literally a conversation between 2 characters, Samantha and Tina. I messaged you guys about it.
Yeah.
I was like,
you said it's incomprehensible.
I don't know what they said. It was another language. Like it wasn't.
Is it
and it
when they
wasn't
were
even
talking
like
about losing her virginity, and she's like, satin?
Yes.
Yeah.
And like they kept interrupting and talking over each other as if it was supposed to be
It's teenage girls, guys. That's
like,
how teenage girls talk.
Dude, I could not believe it. I loved it. I loved it so much. And I get why people have a place in their heart for it, because in the same way that we talked about Nightmare 5 being like, if you took Freddy out of it, it could just be like, and put in Vinegar Syndrome, put it out, like I would just think it's a bonkers, like crazy weirdo slasher. And I think similarly about Halloween 5. It's like, but also somehow a complete understanding of like what Myers was, but just deciding to not listen to any of it. Just not. Loomis is unhinged. I loved it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All right. Well, this was a weird one to kick off the year, and we've recorded a couple more episodes, and it's just getting weirder from here. But
oh yeah,
we are treating ourselves with some good movies in 2023. That is the promise we've made to ourselves. But don't you worry, Die Hard fans, because Beck Kelly's still on this show. Kyle's still on this show. We're going to subject Scott to some bad stuff every once in a while as well.
Keep us down.
We're doing, all I'm going to tell you, hint for in a few months, we're doing something that I have flat out refused to do my entire tenure on this show, which is that I have picked a movie that I have not watched. I've picked a movie that I remember the ads as a child, and it was an anniversary of this movie coming up, and I said, this seems like something that would be good for the show. Let's just do a blind one. I'm pulling a Brian Kelly. We're going in blind on something this year. So, New Horizons.
I hope that I still want to be your friend afterwards.
Who knows? I mean, if you've stuck around this long, I don't think I can lose you.
Yeah, no.
All right, we'll be back next week with more Horror Movie Night.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.